What's up? This is Miles Away. Welcome back to another video. Another year has come and gone, and with it, a whole bunch of amazing music gear has been released. Now for me personally, this year I probably composed and produced more music than I ever have in my entire life. And every single piece of gear on this list inspired me in some way to create more music. And before I get started on this list, I want to try to inspire you in the same way. Remember that whatever gear you're looking at, whether it's hardware or software, whatever gear you already own, it should inspire you to create new music. And at the end of the day, that's why we get this stuff, is to finish songs, start new projects, and create art. Now, before I start sounding too preachy, let's get started on my list for 2023 of the best synths and music production gear. My first pick is the Polyend Tracker Mini. Now I spent some time debating between whether I'd choose the Polyend Tracker Mini or the brand new Polyend Play Plus for this spot on the list, but at the end of the day, I went with the Tracker Mini because of how different it inspired me to work. I had never before thought of producing an entire song using samples of nature, producing it outside of my studio, or anything of that sort. For that reason, the Polyend Tracker Mini is one of my absolute favorite pieces of gear I own now, and I take it with me almost everywhere I go. Whenever I go on vacation, it's just always by my side for a little bit of inspirational jamming whenever I need. Next up on the list is the Walrus Slöer reverb pedal. Now, as most of you know, I'm a huge fan of reverb pedals, and I'm also very hard to please when it comes to reverb pedals. And when I first tried the Walrus Slöer, I was immediately blown away. Instantly, it has one of the most beautiful and simple interfaces, with every single algorithm sounding different, unique, and most importantly, amazingly usable. And it just seems to take synthesizers, vocals, guitars, whatever I throw at it really well. For me personally, the Walrus Slöer has become my absolute go-to reverb when it comes to any sort of long, beautiful, ambient, emotional sounds, because almost everything just has this ethereal, heartbreaking, human sound to it. It's really quite something special that they've managed to make a DSP-based ambient reverb sound so organic, warm, and human, and it just blows my mind every time I use it. Next up on the list, I have two instruments that are both similar, yet at the same time quite different, and both taught me about the world of MPE. First up, the Expressive E Osmose. Now the Osmose is an incredible MPE keyboard controller with per note, pitch bend, vibrato, and a whole bunch of other gestures. The Osmose was one of the most inspiring instruments that I've ever used, and I had a ton of fun learning it and covering it, and I love performing on it and just playing and writing new ideas in. In particular, the Osmose has gotten heavy usage for all of the film and trailer compositions I've been doing this year, because something about the sounds just naturally lend themselves to film score, and the way that I perform with it is so expressive for these ambient intros or climactic buildups and breakdowns. Next up, of course, is the ROLI Seaboard Rise 2. Now, just like the Osmose, the ROLI Seaboard Rise 2 is an incredibly innovative MPE controller. I had probably the most fun I've ever had learning a new instrument when the ROLI Seaboard Rise 2 arrived, and for me, coming from a guitar background, I have to say it was way more intuitive than I expected. There's nothing that matches the feeling in my music of doing the sliding and pitch bend and vibrato of the smooth playing surface of the ROLI Seaboard, and if you're willing to put in the work to learn this instrument, I truly think it's one of the most special pieces of gear ever made. And not to mention, ROLI's Equator 2 VST is absolutely my favorite new VST, and whether you're using the Osmose, the Seaboard, or any other MPE controller, I strongly urge you to pick up Equator 2. It's by far my favorite MPE compatible synth to design sounds on. Next on the list, the Erica Synths SYNTRX 2. Now, I know this was announced in 2022, but for me, receiving mine in 2023 was one of the most amazing experiences I've had with a modular synthesizer. One of the things that has always kept me away from modular synthesizers was my mentality around why would I spend all this time and work to create a patch that I could just make in 2 seconds on one of my non-modular synths. The SYNTRX throws all of that out the window and is unabashedly an experimental synth. Whether it's the randomized patch function or just creating interesting patterns from connecting different things while a sequence plays in the background, I'm always blown away by the quality of sounds and uniqueness of sounds that come out of SYNTRX 2. It has really reinvigorated a love in modular for me, and it's one of my favorite synths to just sit down at after a long day and design sounds and new ideas to use later on in tracks. Now, down to the second last item on this list, the Meris MercuryX. If you watched my recent video on the MercuryX, then this is probably no surprise that it's arriving on this list, because the MercuryX has completely blown my mind of what an effects pedal can achieve. The power of the MercuryX lies in that while on the surface, it's a reverb with great sounding algorithms, hands-on control, and just a very easy to use workflow, if you dive under the hood, you can design pretty much any reverb-based sound you could ever dream of, and the sound fidelity and quality is just mind-blowing. For me personally, this reverb just now lives on my desk, and anytime I want to design some sort of interesting sound, or even just use one of the basic algorithms to give one of my tracks a little bit more life, I turn towards the MercuryX. And finally, last but not least, I have to mention the Groove Synthesis third wave. Now for me, I've always been searching for what would be the end game flagship synthesizer for my studio, and I truly think I found it with the third wave. The third wave on the surface might sound like a wavetable synthesizer with lots of different modulation options, bitimbrality, and it is that and more. It sounds great for all of those classic PPG wavetable sounds as well as modern wavetable sounds. But where I think the third wave truly blows my mind is the virtual analog side as well. Put simply, with the analog filters, analog saturation, and analog VCAs, it sounds equally good, if not better, than most of the analog synths I own. I know the price is quite steep, but if you are looking for a flagship synthesizer, this has to be on your radar. It's truly incredible. I also wanted to give a huge thank you to anybody who owns a Third Wave, who's purchased my patches. It means a ton, and I'm actually working on a second full patch bank, so stay tuned here for more info there. And that about does it. Thank you so much for watching my list of the best synths and music production gear of 2023. I can't wait to see what amazing releases there's gonna be in 2024. And don't forget, don't stop making music. Make sure you have gear that inspires you, and make sure you use that gear to the fullest extent of its abilities. Let me know in the comments what your favorite piece of gear of the year was, and happy holidays. I will see you in the next video.